by the UNCRPD. According to Article 6 of CRPD, there is a recognition that women and girls with disabilities experience multiple discrimination. And so the states should take appropriate measures in order that women and girls with disabilities enjoy all human rights and fundamental freedoms on an equal basis with others. So how did they arrive at this article is that the preamble of the convention discusses that. For example, there was a concern of the difficult conditions faced by persons with disabilities who are subjected to multiple or aggravated forms of discrimination, which include sex and other intersectionalities. Then there is a recognition that women and girls with disabilities are often at greater risk, both within and outside the home, of violence, injury or abuse, neglect or negligent treatment, maltreatment, and exploitation. So this is generally women go through all this, but women and girls with disabilities are at a greater risk within their homes and as well as outside their homes. And also the greater risk is also because of the inaccessibility of communicating those experiences and taking remedies for against those experiences is also a problem. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks. And then emphasizing the need to incorporate, and the convention also recognized that there is a need to incorporate gender perspective in all efforts to promote the full and equal enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms by persons with disabilities. So we need to incorporate gender perspective. So this is another context. The first thing is women and girls with disabilities experience multiple marginalization. Then what do we have? What does CRPD says? CRPD is the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I hope you must have heard about this in your work and earlier in the discussions also. So specific to women and girls with disabilities, how does CRPD look at the whole issue? And then it establishes the general principles.
Ma'am, sorry. Slides is not changing. Slides presentation.
Okay, it's not clear, visible. Okay.
No, it is not changing. You are still in the
it's not changing.
Yeah, now it's fine, ma'am.
Okay. Now it's gone to the next slide. Can you see Article 3?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So then CRPD establishes, so many countries have addressed, sorry?
First slide, ma'am.
Sorry?
First
This
slide,
is the
ma'am.
first slide.
You to start from the first slide.
Okay, okay. Can I stop sharing and share it again?
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Is that possible?
Yes, ma'am, you can. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, I know now how to stop sharing. Okay. So now I have stopped sharing. Now I'll start again so that I think it shouldn't be a problem. I'm not able to share.
Ma'am, can't see this slide.
Yeah, no, I'm also not able to share actually. One second, I think I should move out of this. It's not actually, my window is frozen. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm not able to share my screen because there's no control to share.
We can hear you, ma'am, but can you just tell me again?
No, I'm not able to share because
Ma'am, can you please close the slide and you can open it again? And
yeah, now I can. Now I can.
okay, ma'am.
Now can you see?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible. We can see this.
Okay. Okay. So now can you see Article B on the screen? Okay. Okay. So CRPD general principle has to be followed across all efforts in ensuring and protecting and promoting the rights of persons with disabilities. So just as a refresher, I will just take you through this general principle because we all know that the rights of persons with Sorry?
Title slide is visible. First slide. Second
Okay. It's not moving, is it?
Yes, ma'am. It's still in the first slide in the title.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can we just ignore that? Okay, I don't know what to do now. I will close it and then open it, is it?
Open.
Ma'am,
Okay.
shall we-
I don't know what to do. Yeah, okay. Can I email you my presentation?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. So what is the email ID?
nipmdcre@gmail.com. I will put it in the chat box.
No, I'm just on email. So NIPMD at, sorry,
CRE@gmail.com.
at Sometimes my connection is also really poor. Have you received it?
Just a minute, ma'am. Let me check it. No, ma'am, not yet received.
Okay. It's gone. I didn't get a bounce back my mail.
Ma'am,
Can you?
repeat the mail ID again.
No, I have sent it. It's not bounced actually.
Okay. Have you sent to the mail ID nipmedcre@gmail.com or alone nipmed alone?
Perhaps.
Change
No, I have sent it to NIPMDCRE. NIPMDCRE@gmail.com.
Okay, but we have. Yes, ma'am. Received, ma'am. Just now it is.
Okay.
Just few minutes. We will share it on the same.
Yeah. Okay.
Ma'am, is it visible now?
Yes. Can you go to the third slide?
Yes, ma'am. Just a minute.
Next slide, please. Yeah, can you, yeah, yes. No, I can't see the screen.
It's not visible, ma'am.
Yeah, it's not visible. So can I just make a presentation on my own without showing the PowerPoint?
Yes, ma'am, you can. If the same problem occurred again, you can go with the flow.
Okay, okay. So now, can you all see the screen? NIPMD is making the presentation. Can you go on to screen share mode?
It's visible, ma'am.
Okay, no, I'm asking like a slideshow mode because it's so small. Anyway, it's okay. So Article 3 of CRPD is the crux because it guides how we need to look at the issues related to persons with disabilities. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 is also, the purpose of the act is also to implement these principles. Just to run you all through this, so the first and foremost principle is we need to be watchful about the few words: respect for inherent dignity, individual autonomy, freedom to make one's own choices, and independence of persons with disabilities. So whatever we do in relation to persons with disabilities towards protecting and promoting their rights, it has to ensure that their dignity is taken care in, considered, I mean, respected, autonomy is considered, and there is full, and we ensure freedom to make one's own choices. Then non-discrimination, then equality of opportunity in terms of opportunity as well as in terms of outcome, full and effective participation and inclusion in the community. When we say full and effective participation and not just inclusion, the reason is that sometimes inclusion becomes a tokenistic approach. So having a person with disability in the room may not amount to inclusion, but ensuring full and effective participation would amount to inclusion. So we need to look at inclusion from the lens of full and effective participation. For example, if there is a deaf person in a training and there is no sign language interpretation, or if it is not planned, or we have invited a person with disability, but we don't look at plain language communication, or having a ramp in the premises or an accessible room so that people can move around in a particular space, then it is not full and effective inclusion. Then respect for differences and acceptance of persons with disabilities as part of human diversity and humanity. So it is seen as, our impairment is seen as a human diversity. So that has to be respected, like being tall, short, it's a long, for ages we have been talking this. So our difference is, it has our diversity, the human, it is our disability or an impairment, not disability. Our impairment should be seen as a human diversity, and it has to be, the differences will have to be respected, so that when we do that, we don't want to erase people with disabilities or prevent from existing or not accepting or looking to cure for the rest of our lives if we look at respect for differences. So that's kind of primary objective of this. And then accessibility, we all know, but if it's a principle, then it applies. I mean, CRPD looks at accessibility as a general principle where it is cross-cutting across all activities, all rights and duties and responsibilities. And accessibility, ensuring accessibility is the duty of the service provider or the government, basically. So it's seen as a principle. So whatever we do, we need to ensure whether we have ensured full accessibility in that particular situation and in that context. Then equality between men and women, respect for evolving capacity of children with disabilities, and respect for the right of children with disabilities to preserve their identities. So I have the right as a child to choose my identity and to preserve my identity as a child. Right? And also, if I am adult, then we cannot talk about mental age as a child or whatever. I have to be respected for my age and for the experience that I gather because of living for so many years, and we cannot be infantilized. And similarly, children have the right to preserve their identities, and also we need to respect the evolving capacity. So every day a child learns and evolves, and there cannot be a situation that we don't understand from our environment or we don't evolve. So that has to be respected, and so we cannot decide that a child can go only to fifth standard for till they become 18 years or whatever. So that evolving capacities has to be respected and has to be facilitated. That should be the underlying principle, so that we can facilitate accessibility, we can facilitate assistive devices, we can facilitate communication, we can facilitate rehabilitation services in a way that we respect that the children evolve over a period of time. So principles are very important, and this guides our activities, the duty of the duty bearers, the rights, how much, I mean, the extent, understand even protection of rights, understand even equality. What is equality? It is not equity and equality separately. Only if we ensure accessibility and non-discrimination, equality of outcome would be achieved. So that has to be actually understood. That has to be contextualized also. Next slide, please. Then what does our Persons with Disabilities Act talk about in terms of women with disabilities? There are 4 articles that have sections that have specific mention of women with disabilities. The first is section 4.1, which talk about the appropriate government and local authorities shall take measures that ensure women and children with disabilities enjoy their rights equally with others. So the equality in terms of outcome, when we talk about equality or equally, we need to understand that it is always at the outcome level. So we cannot decide something based on one size fits all. We need to ensure equity. We need to ensure reasonable accommodation. We need to ensure when it comes to women, the gender sensitized, gender responsive approach and CRPD compliant approach. So here in this situation, generally we used to follow a gender sensitive approach or gender responsive approach. But when it comes to women and girls with disabilities, we need to look at both a gender responsive and CRPD compliant approach to our issues, basically. And then we need to look at supporting women with disabilities for livelihood and for upbringing their children. So what do we mean by supporting for livelihood and for upbringing children? In the sense, women with disabilities, there has to be specific measures so that our livelihood opportunities are really ensured. And across life cycle, one might require support.
Miss, not visible, miss. Slides are not visible.
I know, because see, it is with the control.
Okay, ma'am. See.
Sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. You can go ahead.
Ma'am, your mic is mute.
Yes, can you hear me now? My cursor was not moving. And then we need to ensure priority for women with disabilities in all programs. Then representation. So the RPDA has bodies that looks at implementation of the act, both at the union as well as at the state level. And at all levels, central advisory board, state advisory board, all those bodies which are key for implementation of the act talks about representation of women with disabilities. That means we should be part of the decision making process. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. You've gone to the previous slide. Yes, thanks. Then generally what do we have in terms of gender in India is that we have the gender budgeting and the gender budget cells, which is mandated by the government, and we have guidelines for that, and it has to be followed both at the union and the state levels. So there is a charter to have gender budget cell across all departments, which is controlled by the Ministry of Finance, and it is implemented at the state level also. The very purpose is also to ensure all the schemes are gender responsive. So this has to be, so we need to take into account a gender perspective and a gender rest of planning, budget formulation and implementation process.
Participants are requested to wait for a few minutes. Madam is finding some network issue. She will be joining us shortly.
Okay, ma.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am. We can.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now moving on to the next slide. Can you move to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you move the slide? Yes, thank you. So now the big question is, can you all hear me? Because I'm using my phone, my internet is very unstable. So the big question is, how far have we reached
can
in
hear you.
addressing all these issues? Basically, the CRPD is talking about so many rights. Huh? Okay. CRPD is giving us a whole lot of rights. Then there is the general principle. Then we have RPDA, and then we have the larger gender budget cell. So how the big question is, how far we have reached in addressing these? We have ensured that these are implemented. So now we will move on to the realities of women with disabilities. Move to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here I'm just giving a situation analysis We will discuss the gaps in financial data, policy, program, design, implementation bottlenecks that impact women with disabilities in comparison to women in general and men with disabilities. So in this slide, I'm using a vertical bar graph which compares women with disabilities to men with disabilities as per census 2011 and compare the literacy levels, illiteracy levels, and worker population. So the blue bars, there are blue bars and yellow bars. The yellow bars represent female, and we can see that the literacy rate is lower among female women with disabilities, illiteracy is higher, and the percentage of non-worker population is higher among women with disabilities. Then we use the gender responsive budgeting tool to understand the priorities, and we analyze the various budget statements. Why we use the gender responsive budgeting tool is because we have some disaggregation data on women with disabilities. So move to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. So what do we find when we analyze the priority for women with disabilities using the gender budget statement or the gender budgeting tool? Is that we found that there are no programs that are dedicated to women with disabilities. That is 100% allocation to women with disabilities across all government or any government in India. And the existing union program that allocates for women with disabilities, the extent of allocation is only 30%. For example, the programs related to scholarships, the programs related to rehabilitation explicitly state that the maximum allocation that goes for women or girls with disabilities is only 30%. And if you look at the budget allocation overall for from the year 2017-18 to 2021-22, we find that there is kind of a decreasing trend in allocation. So from 2021 to 21-22, we found a decreasing trend. Even the 30% allocation from the different programs, existing programs of the union government, it is taking a decreasing trend. And we also want to highlight here, I also want to highlight here is that this figure pertains only to that of the union government's gender budget statement. And also they disaggregate only the Department of Persons with Disabilities allocation. And so we do not have data about other departments and how much goes for women and girls with disabilities. If we do not know data or if we do not have data, then there will be an accountability issue and we cannot monitor the progress or what is the priority for women with disabilities. That's a major issue that we are confronting in our work. And also it has to be noted that there are programs like Education for All program, Rural Development program, Water and Sanitation also includes persons with disabilities, but we do not have data, disaggregated data on how much or what is the percentage of women and girls with disabilities benefit in those programs. So, however, at any level, both the program level administrative data and financial data, they don't disaggregate both by persons with disabilities and gender. They either do person with disability or gender. So it is not adequate in terms of understanding the outcomes of these programs and policies for women and girls with disabilities. So this is a major problem to even understand where we stand in terms of equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms. Next slide, please. So then moving from the budget to what is policy. Okay, budget, we do not have adequate data. We have only some data, and from that we cannot clearly articulate whether women and girls with disabilities are benefited out of the various programs and policies or not, and whether we have progressed from the status we were in as per census 2011. So, but then we went into policy. I went into policy and program level analysis and framework to understand whether there has been any understanding or responsiveness inbuilt within the policies and programs. Then we found that none of the policies and programs related to persons with disability mandate gender sensitization or responsiveness. So, for example, if there is a rehabilitation program, if there is a grant in aid program for rehabilitation, the Deen Dayal rehabilitation program, which is a grant and aid program to different NGOs, does it mandate gender sensitization of all the staff within the organization to access this grant and aid? Or if there are national institutes, the grants that goes for those institutes or any other program, does it mandate gender sensitization of the implementing agency and the authority? We couldn't find those data. But because we need to understand there is a gender and responsive general understanding, but when it comes to women and girls with disabilities, lot of physical, when there is a rehabilitation program and there is a lot of physical interaction, what would be gender responsive in that context? And how do we ensure gender response? Say, for example, if there is a grant and aid program, do we mandate like at least 40% of children accessing that program to be girls? We don't have such mandates. So the gender sensitization and responsiveness is a big issue when it comes to policies and programs related to persons with disabilities. The impact of this is that we don't focus on girls with disabilities. We don't focus on women with disabilities. That implies that we don't address the specific marginalization because of the intersectionality of gender and disability experienced by persons with disabilities. So that's a major issue that one is confronted with. And then we find that there are no specific social protection measures. We know that there is a mandate to support, even RPDA talks about specific livelihood programs and also come up with support programs to support upbringing of children. Though I cannot call it as a women-specific program because then it will be gender irresponsive. It has to be generally for persons with disabilities. So those support services have not been looked at. But of course, women with disabilities need more care and more support during the course of pregnancy or in their reproductive phases or during their health related rehabilitation phases and so on. That has to be considered. Then women with disabilities, however, are included in the general social protection programs such as NREGA, housing program, pension program, marriage allowance, maternity benefits, and so on, the general maternity benefits and so on. But what we found is that under these programs, there is a lack of consideration to the multiple marginalization experienced by women with disabilities, which impacts the effectiveness of those programs from the lens of women with disabilities. Can you move the slide? Move on to the next slide, please. So here I'm just giving an example of some of the programs and how it is restrictive when it comes to women with disabilities. For example, NREGA, which is the largest, I think, globally acclaimed rural employment guarantee program, it has specific components to accommodate persons with disabilities. But however, when we did a study, what we found was women with disabilities are restricted to a large extent from accessing this program primarily because lack of availability of water and sanitation near the work site. That means we don't have toilets and we don't have accessible toilets anywhere. So this is an issue. So mostly women are reluctant to access this program considering the difficulties. And then the work sites are too far away. It is not within 5 kilometers or whatever. Even if it's 5 kilometers, there is a lack of transportation support, specifically for women with disabilities. That means they have to depend on others to go to the work site, which means they need to rely on some support which is not available for them. Either the family member may not be available to take or support women to move to the work site, or there is no transport system. And if they have to take the support of somebody, then the culturally questionable beliefs hinder women with disabilities in participating from those programs. So these gender issues, the larger gender issue impacts women with disabilities more specifically compared to men with disabilities in accessing the social protection program. Then when we look at pension, the disability pension, which women with disability can access. But however, the key clause of this pension is that one can access this program only when they cannot engage in any other gainful employment, apart from mandating the disability certificate. There is a lack of life cycle approach, and there is a lack of design support to include additional cost of disability, taking into account the impact of intersectional marginalization and vulnerability. So one of the case studies that I would like to share here is that when we went to a field visit, there was a woman with disability. We asked her what is her main source of income, and she said pension is my main source of income, but it is very less and it is very limited. I wanted to do some self-employment venture, but I'm scared because I might lose this pension because of this criteria. But what happens is that women with disabilities have that much more expenses compared to others, and also it's kind of against CRPD, right? Incapacity to work is against CRPD. So we always need to assume capacity to work. And then having a disability allowance has to be seen as a compensation for extra cost because of being a person with disabilities. For example, we do not have accessible transport. We do not have accessible information and communication. We need assistive devices. All those increase the cost at least by 40% more compared to any other family without a disability. So this has not been accounted for, and this gets reflected in when it comes to women with disabilities, because they cannot make choice of moving forward. So always social protection has to be designed with the aim of furthering inclusion and ensuring adequate standard of living. So you may ask the question, how is it a women with disability issue when it is an issue for all persons with disabilities? Yes, it is the issue for all persons with disabilities, but it is a women with disability issue because mostly women with disabilities, if they access pension, families do not want to invest in engaging in any other gainful employment. So it becomes a regressive kind of, people will have to choose between pension and participation. So this will become a more complex aspect when it comes to women with disabilities. And also, if you look at maternity benefit, it is kind of one size fits all. Women with disabilities need more support, more care, and compensation to pay for those extra care and support. But the same amount of leave and the same amount of compensation of 6,000 per annum may not be adequate for women with disabilities. So these are some of the design issues that impact, that has a gender dimension and intersectional dimension to it. Next slide, please. So here, the impact disability certificate, we know that it is a key document for accessing any social protection program. Accessing this a disability ID card requires multiple visits. It doesn't happen in one visit, which means one family member have to accompany the disabled person for so many number of times, which means loss of income for the family. Here we need to consider the families that come from low and middle income, or they come from marginal work or unorganized workforce. So the family members, actually, if you look at this particular dimension, which means extra cost of going to the hospital for accessing disability card, and loss of family income because they have to accompany the person with disabilities for so many visits. So how it impacts women with disabilities is that many times people may not want to invest on women with disabilities because they feel, what is the point? This is kind of a purely gender dimension that adversely impacts women with disabilities, and particularly those who experience high restriction in participation or those who have high support requirements. So the impact is that the more the support somebody requires, the least they get. and which will impact their participation and also inclusion in the community. So these are some of the implementation bottlenecks. If it is not gender responsive, it adversely impacts women and girls with disabilities. So next slide, please. So why do we see that there are these gaps? First and foremost is that lack of political will. If you look at across state governments, budget speech, or any priority or any discussion on disability, we cannot mention the word women. We cannot identify the word women with disabilities mentioned in those speeches. For example, I can very authentically talk about the budget speech. If you look at over a period of number of years, budget speech across years in India, you will not find a mention of women and girls with disabilities. You will have gender. You will have persons with disabilities, but there will not be any intersectional aspect that will be discussed, which is crucial when it comes to persons with disabilities. Similarly, the demands. If the government announces anything for persons with disabilities, they wouldn't announce specifically on anything for women, girls with disabilities. Then we find that there is a lack of participation of women and girls with disabilities, both within the government decision-making bodies as well as within the CSO's decision-making forums, both within the disability movement as well as in the women's movement. Women with disabilities participation is very less compared to anybody else. So mostly programs we find that related to persons with disabilities are based on the demands from the CSOs and from the DPOs. However, those demands do not reflect the multiple marginalization experienced by women with disabilities. So I'm saying that even within our movement, the different stakeholders are not specifically taking a gender dimension for their intervention. So we don't look at it from the intersectional lens. We don't look at it from the systemic marginalization that we have been experiencing over a period of time in designing our interventions. For example, how many rehabilitation programs have considered mandating, there is a POCSO or anti-sexual harassment in workplace guidelines to be made aware of the women and girls with disabilities within their working area. We don't have that. The DPOs, the federations, they do not have the policy to implement the anti-sexual harassment law within their work domain. So there is no space.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am. It's not visible your PPT, ma'am.
Yeah, it should be done from the
Yeah. It's visible. It's visible.
Okay.
Sorry for the inconvenience. Go ahead.
Yeah, despite the progress, there has been progress because there are leaders from the women's group emerging, but we are yet to take significant role within the disability movement and within the different movements, at different levels of the governance. So that's missing. Women's movement has started recognizing this gap, but what we find is a lack of in-depth understanding of the intersectional marginalization. Then other sectoral movements, say for example, those who work on education, those who work on health or labor related issues are yet to pick up the specific issues of women and girls with disabilities. So when we talk about accessible toilets in school premises, we do not talk about the gender dimension of menstrual support services. So how should a caregiver in the school be trained so that girls with disabilities are supported during their menstrual cycle? So because of this, many times girls with disabilities drop out of school and there are no studies about it. These experiences we gather through case studies. We gather through parents sharing why they have stopped sending their children to school beyond a particular point. So particularly when it comes to girls with disabilities, there are many stories that we get to hear, but where is it getting documented? So what is being done? 200 rupees, the government gives 200 rupees for girls to access schools, but how are they going to ensure that they get the required support and accessibility is ensured to manage the menstrual cycle of girls while accessing education schools. So those are the discussions we are not even having those discussions. And what are the different forms of assistive devices that we need to look at for women with disabilities compared to general assistive devices, considering the roles, the historical roles women are expected to play within the family and outside the family. It's not going to go away. But we don't have assistive products in terms of handling your utensils, which is accessible. There are no innovations in terms of products and services. Even to manage our menstrual cycle, the pads, the period pads are not accessible for many of us. So we need to choose from the available options, but there is no discussion around ensuring accessibility of those products. So this limits participation of women and girls with disabilities is what I'm trying to say. Because once girls reach a particular age group, then most of the time we drop out. And the same thing happens in an employment situation. Many women with disabilities drop out of employment because of long hours of bladder and bowel control, because the toilets are not accessible. They require a lot of movements to the toilets, long walks, or there is no inaccessible toilets, and there is no proper system of disposal of menstrual waste, and also to manage our menstrual cycle while we are working. So there is no discussion happening on those fronts. Then the disability movement has women's group and federation, but it still lack a momentum to address and include specific issues experienced by women with disabilities in the broader discourse. For example, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities talks about when the redressal mechanism when there is a violence and abuse meted out on persons with disabilities. But that is more relevant for women with disabilities. Implementation of those sections will be more relevant for women with disabilities. However, the disability movement, if you look at the last 4 years agenda, demand of the disability movement, we couldn't see a pressure to implement those sections in terms of sensitizing the local police, or sensitizing, having a pool of local NGOs, so that a person, when reported of an abuse, can go as a respite care, and the social protection that has been committed through the Act. What is that value of the benefit, and how the local the magistrate office is going to address the issues around abuse and violence against persons with disabilities. That system that is discussed in the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act is not actually discussed widely and elaborately, and it is not linked with the existing women related redressal bodies, such as the district DV office or DV cell, or the anti-sexual harassment cell in workplace. How do we link all these together? There has not been any discussion, and these demands are not being discussed widely. So there is kind of clearly lack of political will across different groups, both government and at CSO level, and lack of awareness and participation among women with disabilities are the major issues that I would say. And lack of mandates on the service providers across stakeholders to look at the gender dimension and also the gender responsiveness when it comes to women and girls with disabilities. Next slide, please. So what is the way forward? So as we say way forward, the first and foremost thing is gender responsiveness, and the impact of multiple marginalization has to be part of all training programs of professionals at different levels of planning, implementing, and accountability building, including the rehabilitation professionals, because mostly rehab professionals also look at individuals as a disabled person and not looking at the intersectional marginalization and not taking a lens from where they come from. Then training and sensitization of women and girls with disability on the general laws related to women, which includes laws against sexual abuse and violence. All redressal mechanisms must be audited for accessibility by women and girls with disabilities, and accessibility must be ensured. The greater participation of women with disabilities in all decision-making processes, then reframing the existing policies and programs to be responsive for women and girls with disabilities, and also RPDA 2016 or CRPD compliant. Then discussion of gender identity. Yeah, slide please, it's not visible. Discussion on gender identity, gender roles, gender myths on sexuality and sexual orientation has never been a discussion. Though CRPD Principle 8 talks about children with disabilities have the right to preserve their identity, those identity-related discussions do not happen in the environment in which they gather their knowledge, because mostly communications are not built around those things. Then capacity building within the disability movement, and then engaging and informing other social movement about intersectional marginalization. Then reframing the gender budget statement or the gender cell to also include and disaggregate data on persons with disabilities and gender. Then the existing social audit systems will have to be reframed to include impact assessment of any program that we implement, be it a social sector player, civil society actor, or the government agencies. The impact assessment has to be also done from the lens of women and girls with disabilities. So I end my presentation here, and I will. There is only 2 minutes. Anybody can ask me any doubt or clarification. I'm sorry for the technological issues. It was a very bumpy start in the beginning. I'm sorry for that. But then I could finish the presentation. You can ask for any clarification or questions if you have.
Thank you, ma'am, for the information you have shared. Though we had some problems, some technical issues, you made it very clear, and you gave what actually the team wants to be. Thank you so much, ma'am. And shall I start the presentation?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. And dear participants,
Thank you, ma'am.
You can put it in the chat box, or you can ask, ma'am.
Second and third slide, please.
Ma'am, second and third slide, ma'am.
Second and third.
Just a minute, ma'am. Let me share that.
Second slide, next slide. Third and fourth, not second and third.
This one, ma'am?
No, I don't want, somebody else ask for it.
Article 3, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, Article 3, general principle, fourth slide. Somebody is asking for fourth slide, yes.
Is it visible, Ms. Meghala?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Visible.
thank you, ma'am.
Shall I move to next slide, or?
Yes, ma'am. Next slide.
Is it visible, ma'am? Section 4, 424, 25, and 7. Dear participants, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box, or you can ask, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
So you can go through these articles. If you Google CRPD, you will get this full version, Meghla.
Hello, ma'am.
You can Google CRPD, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and it is there. It is on Google. So you can Google it and you can get this document.
Ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, Lavanya would like to ask something.
Ma'am, second slide is so, ma'am. Slide second.
Slide second, this means are you telling about Article 3 or the content slide? Second slide is content slide.
So there is one question. CSO is Civil Society Organization and DPO is Disabled People's Organization. So this slide doesn't have much actually.
Ma'am, once again repeat the CSO and GSO. ma'am.
CSO is Civil Society Organization. DPO is Disabled People's Organization.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.